Hello, I'm chess expert Gil Luna. In this video, we're going to learn how to stop the pawn from promoting when the pawn only needs one square to promote. Okay, here as you can see, white is about to promote and the game will most likely be a draw. King and queen versus king and queen. However, there is a way that black can stop the pawn from promoting. This is a very useful endgame skill. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this queen closer to the king. And we don't have time to waste, so we have to do a check. If we don't check, the pawn will promote and the game will be a draw. So let's start with this check, queen check. Now the king is not going to voluntarily go in front of his pawn and stop it from promoting. So he's going to try to make this as difficult as possible. So let's say white goes here, okay, once again, threatening promotion. All right. So here as black, what you can do is you can get behind the pawn so that it cannot promote. So now the king has to come closer to protect the pawn. Now you can check again. And the king can play over. And here, this is the critical moment. This is where a lot of people get confused. All right, you don't have to check in this position. This is your ideal position. So what you're going to do is you're going to go behind the pawn again. Stop it from promoting. So now when the king comes to defend the pawn, this is the important check. You check right here on the third rank. So now the king has to move in front of the pawn. Now this is your goal. Your goal is to get this king to move in front of the pawn. The reason is this queen is not going to be able to capture this pawn by herself. She needs the help of the king. So in order to buy time to bring the king closer, you need this king to obstruct his own pawn from promoting. So now that the king has moved in front of the pawn, you have a tempo to move your king closer. Now white is going to continue to try to promote the pawn. So king f7, threatening to promote the pawn again. So what do? We need to find a check again. All right, so we're going to check this king here. Okay, and the king can go here, and we check the king again, and we stop this pawn from promoting. The king is going to move over to protect the pawn. We're going to check this king again. Now he's not going to voluntarily get in front of his pawn, right? So what is he going to do? Move over. Now what do? We get behind the pawn again on the third rank, sixth rank, but third. So now the king is going to go here to protect his pawn. What do? Critical moment. We check here. Now the king is forced once again to go in front of the pawn. This buys us the tempo to do what? Bring our king closer. So here we have a tempo. We've brought our king closer. Now this is tedious, but it works. So here we have king coming out to d7. Once again, now you're under constant threat of this pawn promoting. Okay, so you need to constantly be stopping this pawn from promoting. All right, now here you can play queen here as well so that the pawn cannot go forward. All right, or you can check the king. Either one of those moves, let's say you check the king. He's not going to voluntarily go in front of his pawn. He's going to go here to try to guide the pawn in. Okay, here we're going to have to check the king again. All right, so we're going to check the king again. Still, he doesn't want to voluntarily go in front of his pawn, so he's going to play here. And now we do the classic trick of attacking the pawn, forcing the king to go to protect the pawn, and then we do our check to get the king in front of the pawn again. What do? We bought ourselves our tempo to bring the king closer. Okay, so we're going to bring our king closer. If the king comes here, all right, the pawn cannot promote because it's, the pawn cannot promote because it's pinned by the queen. Okay, so he's not going to go there. He's going to try to come out again. Here you can check. King here, check. Here we go again. King in front of pawn. And now, by simply moving the king up, the game is over. Checkmate in 2. All right, the king is obstructing his own pawn. King moves over. Queen takes pawn check. King moves over, and checkmate. So once you've established that pattern of doing the checks and making sure that you force the king in front of the pawn, your goal is to simply bring your king closer after doing that. Now, this next position is unique, and you're going to have to learn this as well. So let's get to this next position. Okay, so here we go. We have the next position, and we are going to try to use the same principle, all right? So I'm going to start with this check, and the king is going to try to protect this pawn. I'm going to go check again. The king is going to go here. I'm going to go check again. The king is going to go here, just like you learned in the previous problem. So now we're going to go here. We're going to stop this pawn from going in. And when the king comes here, what do? We check the king here, right? So now that forces the king in front of the pawn so that we can come closer. No, it doesn't. This is a unique position that you need to learn. Because it's a bishop pawn, the dynamic of the position has changed. Now the king can simply move to the corner and say, take my pawn. Because if you take my pawn, it's a stalemate. Okay, so that's a pretty cool trick. All right, he does not have to commit to defending the pawn. He can simply give you the pawn. So this position is a draw. Okay, if it's a bishop pawn, it's a draw. Because you can't ignore the pawn either, because if you ignore the pawn, white is simply going to promote, and it's going to be a draw anyway. So let's say in this position you decided, okay, I'm not going to ignore the pawn, but I'm going to check the king again. That's fine. The king's going to go over, and then you're going to have to do the same exact thing because the king is going to promote again. So even if you went king here, and the king went there, and you did a check, and here, and you did the check, he does not have to move in front of the pawn. He simply runs to the corner and says, take my pawn, stalemate. So no progress can be made. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed this video.